Hey, I'm Dawn Marie Solis with Neuro Awesome Life, and I am here today with Riley Keene. He is the CEO of Carecorder LLC. I saw a video of Riley showing off some new tech that I got so excited about, and I immediately reached out and messaged, and he was kind enough to get back to me and say that he would talk to me. And I can't wait to share what he's doing and him with everybody out there. So Riley, I'm going to let you say most stuff because you're going to do it better than me. But can you give everybody a little bit of an idea of who you are, what your company's about, and this tech that I went like nuts over?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for the kind words. So my name is Riley Keene. I'm the CEO of Carecorder, and our company is a peripheral device manufacturer that came out, was inspired by accessible technology. That's what my background is in, accessible technology. And the product, which Dawn mentioned, is called a Carecorder One. It is a device that uses three-dimensional rather than one-dimensional switches to type, and it is also a device which allows for an intelligent corded entry. Fluid corded character entry is the name of the intellectual property, and basically what it means is that in addition to typing letters one at a time, you can also press many letters at the same time to output entire words. There's also a version that looks like a QWERTY keyboard called the Carecorder Lite that has that same cording technology built into it. And the technology specifically that I believe Dawn got excited about was a wearable version of this, which we'll be announcing next week, or sorry, in 2 weeks, and be releasing for public purchase. And in combination with that, there's also a speech synthesizer that we developed for use with Carecorder. So the video that you saw showed me walking around with my Carecorder attached onto my belt, basically. Me using Carecorder as a substitution for speech. So instead of talking, I was just saying like "hello there" and talked about the product. Now maybe we'll do a demo next time we have one of these discussions. But there's videos out there, and I'll be posting some more as well. So
I'll link to them in the description for this so that people can get a better idea of what we're talking about.
Great, thank you. This application of the technology was inspired by an email from someone who was mute, that said they were trying to start a business, but they felt that because of their inability to talk, they had trouble like leading meetings with their clients and having these engaging discussions. They just felt that they were at a severe disadvantage over their peers and fellow business owners. So using Carecorder technology, they felt that, hey, maybe I could help to command a room better if I can simulate, or if I can use an alternative to traditional vocalization to be able to communicate with others at the same rate the rest of us take for granted. And when we saw that message, our team just sort of like dropped everything for a bit. We were like, okay, we need to like find a solution for this person. So we did a little development sprint. We built both the hardware and the software components to make it work for them, and we sent it out. And the video that I had posted, I think got several million views, and we got all sorts of comments from people that were saying things like wow, this would totally change my life, or wow, I'm like my son or daughter is mute, and I'm so glad that somebody is working on this. I can't wait to until it's ready for them. So really excited to launch it and see where it goes. And then the other comments that we got were from non-mute persons as well, people that are nonverbal for other reasons. For instance, people on the autism spectrum that maybe they're not nonverbal all the time, but sometimes they are. There's a whole class of devices, which I'm sure, Dawn, you're familiar with, which are referred to as AAC devices, which at least stands for Augmented Assistive communication tool or something along those lines. The most famous version of this device, which most people seem to be familiar with in popular culture, would be like Stephen Hawking. And in his case, he's using eye tracking software to like select these, basically select words on a screen. And it's very, very slow, especially for someone like Stephen Hawking. But even for people that maybe don't have any sort of neuromuscular disorder, they have full, there's no physical disability that they're dealing with, but they still find themselves in situations, especially when they're overstimulated, that they're not able to speak. And the popular version of AACs that these persons use is basically like a tablet. Think of like an iPad or a tablet with a bunch of folders, just like a grid of images. And let's say you wanted to say strawberry, then you would click on food and then fruit, and then you like scroll until you go to the S, and then like strawberry, and then the tablet goes strawberry. And probably that whole process, if you're trying to type out a whole sentence, like maybe if you're really, really good at it, or it's something that you commonly say, maybe you're typing at like 40 to 50 words per minute, or like average typing speed, if you're good at it. Whereas with CareRecorder, you have instant access to any possible word. There's over 17 billion possible word combinations on this device. So once you learn to use it, once you're good at this, you can communicate at the same speed of the average talking speed, 150 words per minute, or potentially even faster than average talking speed. So what that means is that you're no longer limited by your thought, at least not any more limited than somebody using their vocal cords, limited by the speed of their thought in terms of their capacity and efficacy in communicating new ideas to others.
Yeah, I'm still just as excited as I was when I first found you. I am autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, dyscalculic, and dyspraxic. That set of neurotypes all kind of crammed into one brain can be at times like really brilliant and capable and useful, and at other times I have situational mutism. So there are times where my brain stops letting me talk. It's not being difficult, being resistant, having an attitude. My brain can, the sort of small version of it is I can still have thoughts, but I can't speak them. I just stop having thoughts at all. I'm so overwhelmed that like everything's just powering down at rapid speed. And so, my personal relationship to seeing your device was I could be safer in situations where I become situationally mute if I had a device as my backup plan.
Right.
So an example of that is an emergency room situation is very overwhelming. I have sensory challenges. If I'm in an emergency room, something's wrong, right? So there could be a lot of things going on that could start to limit my ability to talk with somebody. If before I get to the point where my brain's just shutting down, I have an alternative communication method, that's potentially life-saving.
Sure.
Because if you start off talking to someone at all, and then you stop talking to someone, you're literally at the mercy of their judgment as to why you have stopped talking.
Right.
And there are a number of different situations for people who have this situational mutism challenge that are uncomfortable at best, right? You get asked a direct question in a business meeting and your brain flatlines and you have no words. That's fun, right? So those are like embarrassing, but there's also all the way up to legitimately life-threatening, and depending on what portions of news you hear, we know of situations where autistic people have not been able to communicate, have started to appear, important word, appear to act erratically. Maybe they're starting to have a meltdown. Maybe they're stimming, trying to get their voice back, right? Maybe they're starting to move a lot, trying to get the energy out that's preventing their words, and they're misunderstood.
Yeah.
And the person who's misunderstanding feels a threat to their safety or their life, and they respond as such.
Right.
It's horrifying and devastating. And so there were so many reasons, because of myself, because of the work I do, because of the people I'm in community with, that I saw a near real-time device that can take our thoughts and put them into audible speech, and something that I can wear. I can leave the house with it immediately available. And, you know, we're not doing a demo today, but the wearable that I saw you use was almost like a belt, and you had like a keyboard on, you know, not a full keyboard, but like your, you know, your word combination keyboard on either side. And so it was tight to the body. It was close to the body. It could keep you focused and small, and all of those things that might be important if you're trying to get your head back.
Yeah.
Trying to communicate with high stress. So today we are recording on March 14th, 2023, because you said earlier that you're going to be making announcements in a couple of weeks. So I want people to know what that means, because your video is going to last much longer than this particular moment. What are you hoping for your devices to do at sort of this first stage of rollout?
So the first, I think it's very important whenever you're releasing a new technology or even a variant of a new technology, is to go into it with an open mind. So we've already created a beta group, a private channel for people that have some sort of disability and are using the device specifically for that purpose, so that we can work with them and learn from them how they're using the minimum viable product and what we can do better. So we don't even know which types of disabilities, which, you know, intersectionalities, which groups are going to benefit the most from it. We don't know how these different groups are going to be using it differently amongst themselves. So I think even things that you brought up right now, there's definitely going to be a group that if your mind goes blank, then you're probably not going to be able to use this product either. But maybe as you're getting to that point, there's some preset chords for an entire phrase that says like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like you can just press one button. Hey, hello there, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Please just give me like a little bit of space, and I'll love to, you know, address or follow up with you once I calm down, or an endless number of different preset types of sentences or phrases that you could use for the device would be really valuable. That's something which the technology already allows people to be able to implement those sort of use cases themselves, but they might not know how to do it yet. And maybe some of those features are so commonly used that they should come pre-packaged and maybe communicated more widely as we're sharing the technology with others. So it's very early. I would say that the keyboard itself, and it is a full keyboard replacement, by the way, the camcorder is more established, but this application, as far as speech synthesization goes, is a little bit more new and cutting edge.
That idea of pre-programmed things to say, I mean, the countless number of times I have said, I wish I had one of those like Staples easy buttons that said, please be patient, I'm overwhelmed. Or like, if I could walk into a place and say, I'm not trying to be rude, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Just like, and I know people who suffer from social anxiety and a whole bunch of other things where a piece of technology that could do any amount of talking for them
Mm-hmm.
would be brilliant. You know, if they have to go in and they feel like they kind of have to explain themselves over and over and over again. You know, some folks won't even go. It's too stressful. It's going to cause, you know, shutdown or even meltdown and overwhelm. And if they had something that they could just wear and they like push a button and like, hey, I'm Dawn Marie. I'm autistic and I will really enjoy being here, but I don't choose to interact today. Right?
Yeah.
Anything. I have like a zillion
Right. And
possible
you could have different chord sets based on sort of how you're feeling that day or what level of interaction you want to have. You could have one just for your introduction. You could have another chord for types of like, hey, I don't want to talk, but I would love to, you know, listen and be with you. You could have another chord that's like, hey, I just kind of want to sit by myself and observe and just be a part of this, you know, whatever party or event that's taking place, but that I don't want to socialize. It's limitless what you could do. And I do think that there is somewhere along that spectrum of social anxiety and social comfort, there is almost certainly a group of people that would be comfortable talking with a care reporter, but not comfortable talking with their mouth and with their facial expressions, perhaps. So as someone who's spent a lot of time with people of all types of different disabilities, and somebody who has heard the horror stories of things like, you know, police pulling over somebody who has autism, and then they have this instance where they're not able to respond, and they end up like being arrested and taken to jail because the police was like, what is going on? This person's freaking out. Just these things that happen because of what I see as just a lack of education and a lack of technological intervention, rather than it's the fault of any individual necessarily. So I hope that we can provide a solution for a range of people that have suffered or potentially could suffer from this. And then two, I hope that spreading the technology also will raise awareness and will inspire people to become more educated of to why somebody might need this type of system.
So you'll be announcing in a couple of weeks. Do you have a timeline where some amount of these devices will be to more of a general public? Or are you not quite there yet?
So sorry, you broke up a little bit there in the middle of your question.
Okay. So, yeah, we're having behind me, I explained this before we started recording, but behind me is fake, right? It is not sunny and grassy. It is actually blizzarding and windy and horrible outside, right at the window that's in front of me. So sorry about any delays in the video, but you're gonna make some announcements in a couple of weeks. Beyond that, do you have any kind of, fingers crossed, timeline for an early release, a general release, anything like that?
So we have actually already shared a beta version of the speech synthesizer with the select number of people that had reached out to us after posting the last video. So they're already using it, and the care recorder device is already available for purchase. We've been trying all year to catch up our production for people that want these, and finally, just over the past like week or 2 weeks, we finally are starting to ship these out every single week. So anybody could already go ahead and buy one of these and start practicing on it.
Oh, that's exciting.
The wearable attachment and the official release of the speech synthesization software are what the upcoming announcements are around.
Okay. All right. I understand. I will be patient until you officially announce. Okay.
Yeah, anybody that wants access to the software, just reach out to me or ping a care recorder rep on our Discord server, and we'll make sure that you get added and you have permissions to be a part of that group.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. That's really good news. Are you still fundraising?
We're in the middle of a fundraising round right now.
Okay. And is that open to the general public, or is that more specific to larger, larger dollar amounts?
It's not open to the general public yet, but there's going to be an announcement. We have a lot of announcements coming up at the end of April about opportunities for anyone in the general population to be able to invest in our company. But currently, the current fundraising round we're doing is only private investors and angel investors. But if somebody is interested, again, please reach out. The worst we can do is put you on the email list so that you can be notified whenever those options are available.
Okay, that's great, because I see such an amazing future for you all there. And I mean, really, part of what I felt and continue to feel since I first saw your video online is just profound gratitude for the way you all responded to the story that you were sent, right? That here's a person trying to share their talents and their intellect and their passions and energy with the world. And verbal communication is too myopically standardized as the way to communicate. And that's one of the things that I do some of my advocacy work in, is trying to help the general population understand that there are many, many different ways to communicate, and that those are equally valid.
Right.
But also that disability is just really misunderstood and mischaracterized in our society. And so, somebody like this individual who was your inspiration can be looked at as somebody who would never have a thought to have their own business, right? The general population might look at that individual and never assume that inside their beautiful brain, there's all this stuff that wants to come out. Yeah. And part of what happens with those assumptions is that we don't have a lot of folks like you and your team who are creating so that non-traditional folks have access to regular life. And so I find what you all are doing inspiring and edifying, because especially just the way you described it, you obviously already have knowledge and intent to benefit so many different kinds of folks. The ability to communicate audibly and verbally is only one method of appropriate communication.
Yep.
Those who don't have access to that mode are disabled by lacks in society much more than they are actually personally disabled. If they had tech like yours, if they had a society that automatically assumed there are 90 different ways to communicate things, that sense of disability would diminish significantly.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the first things we've got to do is start really acknowledging that folks with disabilities are full human beings with, emotions and thoughts and intellect and drive and all kinds of stuff. We have to start there so that we can start making systems and societies and tech and all of the things that create fewer barriers, that disable less, because these folks are able. We just need to provide the space for them to be them.
Absolutely. Are you familiar with the curb cut effect?
Say that again, please.
Familiar with the curb cut effect?
No.
So the curb cut effect is there's a really good podcast on it that I first heard about it called 99% Invisible. And it talks about sort of the journey of how ADA was established and the discussions in our country around like, oh, is it really worth it to rebuild every sidewalk in the entire country for just a small percentage of people? Like, I never see anybody in wheelchairs. Oh, the reason you don't see anybody in wheelchairs is because there's not curb cuts, and they're prisoners of their own home. They can't get out. And there's this awesome, just inspiring story about how they like climbed up the steps of the Capitol, like they jumped out of their chairs, this group of people, so that they could be heard in the hearing where these decisions were being made. There's no other way for them to get there. And it's crazy to me to look at that and also see how many other people have benefited from curb cuts that we didn't see before. So the curb cut effect is this idea that when you go out of your way to help and empower the marginalized, it's something that inevitably benefits everyone. So now, any mom that takes their kids on a walk in their stroller just takes that totally for granted, even though it wasn't created for them. I mean, the e-scooter industry probably would never have been started if it weren't for curb cuts, because it's like having just a scooter parked anywhere as a means of transportation wouldn't be a viable option. Bicyclists, and it's just there's always things that we don't see in that regard. So the curb cut effect, again, is the belief that whenever you do help people, it inevitably will grow into something that you don't fully understand. And that's sort of the story of Carecorder. And I believe that very strongly. Not only do I believe that it happens sometimes, but I believe it is inevitable that whenever you create these solutions for what seems like a small group of people, it actually is something that everyone can learn from and everyone can benefit from. So I think that this form of nonverbal communication will benefit even people that don't necessarily that are mute or on the autism spectrum or are nonverbal in some other meaningful way. Because I think that, I mean, what's the statistic that you always hear? Like 90% of communication is nonverbal anyway. So how crazy is it that we haven't been able to fill that 10% gap for the rest of those people? And I think that there is definitely a time and a place for even someone like me who doesn't suffer from being mute, that I would benefit from using this technology instead of talking. I think there's all sorts of, like you had talked about the captioning company that had the little badge.
Badger, yes, they were last year's special project for me. I got so excited. And just for people who are watching, Badger is a name badge sized wearable that is speech to text, and it can be handed off and shared. It has phone app capability, but it means anybody who's benefited by reading, so you can be deaf and know what the person across from you is saying. You can speak another language. There's so many different uses for this speech to text technology. So yes, so just so people know what we're talking about, Badger. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can see that this sort of wearable pairing with something like that to provide like real-time captions in life that are specific not only to just the audio that's flying through the air from who knows what direction, but to the person that's talking. So you could have a panel discussion, you know who's saying what, to make everything more verbal. I can see, I mean, there's so many words that I don't even honestly even know how to spell without my Carecorder, because I have a cord for it, just because they're really hard to spell otherwise. Or if I did want to spell it correctly, I'd have to type it out like 2 or 3 times. Like, all right, that looks right. But let me click on it and Google it just to make sure, okay, it is actually right. So having cords is not just something for people with disabilities. And we have actually the vast majority of the users of our product, even though this was developed for people that are differently abled, are not people with disabilities.
Yeah, they're just, I think so many people can relate to some point in the day where you've had so many meetings and so many things you needed to do, and you're kind of done emoting and speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a whole lot of pleasantness left. Right? And if people come to you with their needs, or your children come to you with their needs, or so the next person comes, they may not be getting your best self.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was just normal,
Mm-hmm.
most people had the ability to have something else speak for them when necessary. It's normal. We'd
Yep.
just get used to it, right? And we would stop over stressing ourselves in those moments where we might be a little fragile, might be more likely to snap, to say things we wish we hadn't, to give nasty faces, whatever, right? Some of that pressure would be gone.
Yes,
And
I think there are so many circumstances where I consider it to be less of a mental load for me to type on my recorder than it is for me to vocalize. And you're talking about like the end of the day. I'm thinking about, so my wife and I sometimes, whenever we're talking at the end of the day, we just type back and forth. And for us, that works. It creates like this sort of but it's also different than texting when someone's not in the same room as you, right? Because then that also leads to opportunities for miscommunication. They always talk about how emails can be misinterpreted and things, but the communicating by text in the same room is very different from like an email or text message, and it's also very different from talking. It's sort of somewhere in between, because there's a lot of convenience to being able to read as opposed to listen is also less of a mental load. And I would also say that typing, whenever you're recording at least, is less of a mental load for outputting speech, outputting communication than vocalization.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about education settings. Young people growing up, or young adults in college. There are definitely times where a regularly chatty child
Mm-hmm.
or adult needs to think very hard. And when they have to think very hard, then having to vocalize, use their mouth to put words out there, actually stops the deep thinking process.
Yes.
And if they could set their body to doing the communicating,
Yes.
there's something different about that. So part of my background is alternative learning styles and how to educate when the input needs are significantly different in the same room. And so that's part of why I went there, is I'm already kind of pre-wired to be thinking about, I've got a class of 17 children, and it's probable that I have 17 different learning style combinations in the room. And those different learning style combinations are going to be amplified or diminished depending on what's going on. And there are young people that get poor participation grades. I'm doing air quotes there for folks who can't really see me. Low participation grades because they don't feel able to say their ideas out loud if they're not 100% sure they're correct.
Right.
Or for a zillion other reasons. And so they look like they're neglecting their participation piece of their place in the classroom. And something really interesting happened. There's this technology that some teachers use for like quizzes and games and stuff like that, where the kids get these push button answer devices, and you can ask a question and there's like A, B, C, D on the push buttons, and they can respond that way. Class participation goes way up.
Yep.
Way up when there is a perceived sense of safety in answering. Right? So yeah, just from my background and who I am and all the work that I currently do, I see universal acceptance of your technology and technology like yours as a needed next step in how we function together as a society. You know, you were talking about the curb cut effect, and in my world, that's universal design. So my events, the work that I'm trying to do, I'm constantly talking about universal design, which is exactly what you said the curb cut effect is. How do you make things better for everyone by starting with the person least likely to participate? Right? Whether it's because of ability or whatever it is, how do you design for the person who's least likely to be able to participate in a way that is better for everyone? I've used the example of the ramp into buildings as an example of universal design, and explained that a possible working solution to get a wheelchair into a building that only has stairs is to design a new wheelchair. And that's a reasonable thing to consider designing, right? If there are stairs, maybe we can figure out how to make the wheelchair climb the stairs, right? That's reasonable.
Sure.
But then the solution only serves a very small portion of the population. A ramp potentially solves for almost everybody, even those who don't feel like they need a ramp.
Right.
And that's, you know, either the curb cut effect or universal design, whatever, you know, whatever you're used to calling it. But to me, thinking about the world in terms of how do we make things better for all of us, it's an abundance mentality. And that's what I hear you talking about. You took a heartbreaking but inspiring story. You know, it inspired you all to do a thing. And you started creating something that wasn't just for one section of the population, but you could see being there for everyone. And that gets at the heart of so many things that would attempt to divide us. And for me, the work that I'm trying to do, I'm looking for all the stuff that's going to help us be more in community with one another and less divided into they, them, can't, like, you know, they versus them camps, me versus them camps, what, you know, however you want to put it, us, them. When in communication is fundamental to that.
I love what you. I love how you wrapped that up into the concept of universal design, and you really got my gears turning, specifically when you're talking about like normalizing this in classrooms and for kids as part of learning. I can definitely see. I understand why kids are more likely to be able to press a button at their desk rather than shouting out, because like shouting out or everybody raises their hand and you pick one person out of 30 that gets to respond, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if kids can, let's say if you have a classroom full of kids that are fluent and able to use a care recorder, they can all, anytime a question is asked, they can all provide an answer, which with audible communication, you can't do that. You can't have 30 people shouting at you at once. But if you have 30 text bubbles that pop up in front of you with some sort of either a badger wearable display or some sort of augmented reality or virtual classroom, the teacher can then read through all those answers very, very quickly, much more quickly than if she was going to ask each one individually and listen. And I think that there's so much power in making things accessible that goes beyond just inclusivity.
Yeah, yes. Inclusiveness, inclusivity, inclusion has become my package of I don't want it anymore. right now. I'm my whole being, literally for as long as I can remember, has been about trying to help folks belong. Inclusion is a step in that direction, but inclusion always is one owner, one non-owner trying to figure it out.
Wow.
So though it is a step in the right direction, it never allows the non-owner to feel they're in their right place. And it diminishes the capacity of the perceived owner to truly be in a connected community with the non-owner, right? So I think children are wonderful examples of inclusion, right? We tell children to share. We tell children to move over on the couch and make space for their sibling, right? It's never happy. When you sort of forcefully insist on inclusion, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be a feeling that someone is unnaturally and uncomfortably in my space. And I didn't have a choice.
Right.
Where belonging is an entirely different world.
Yes.
Even if I don't like all of the things about somebody, if I truly believe they belong, I have a different response to them being there.
Right. Oh my gosh, yes. So let's imagine if instead of building curb cuts into all the sidewalks, what if the government just passed a law that said, anytime you see somebody with a wheelchair, you have to help them get their chair down off of the curb or help them cross the street. That is the difference, I think, that you're describing as inclusivity versus belongingness. And one of them has this sort of like territorial requirement that makes both parties uncomfortable in some way, or has the potential to at least. Whereas the other, in creating a truly accessible world where everybody belongs, it just allows them to be a part of it rather than to be included. It's like I think the couch sharing is great when your parents make you take your little brother with you. It's like, oh gosh, here we go. I have to include him now, and maybe he's partially happy about that, but there's a tension there, and I think that you can't expect somebody to be a true citizen in your society if you're treating them like charity rather than as somebody that deserves the same rights and I don't know what
space.
I'm looking for. Space. There you go.
Yeah.
The same as everyone else. They deserve that.
And I think when we can come at it from, I believe universal design is an abundance perspective. Universal design says we can find a way for everybody to have what they need. And it's very different from compromise. Inclusion is a compromise concept. Like you said, we're both going to be uncomfortable. I think about one of the things I have in my background is care of the elderly. And I think about having to learn how to help somebody in and out of their chair, how to safely navigate that chair with them in it. And if you made a law that said, if you see a person in a wheelchair, you have to help, the person in that wheelchair is in so much danger.
Right. Yes.
How do you know everybody knows how to do that? How do you, right?
Right.
And and then you have like the folks who feel like totally passionate about helping, fighting with the people who think they're supposed to help but don't want. Like, it just creates the weirdest problems.
Yes.
Right? Like, no, I saw them first. I'm helping. I didn't see them at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Just the weirdest problems.
Right.
When you artificially impose
yes
how we are with each other. Where if you can create something that not only acknowledges but values the specific identity of each person. It's not this person needs, therefore we will take from you. And now you may not have quite enough.
Yeah.
But this person needs, and if we think together, we'll not only find out how to solve this need, your life will improve.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine not wanting that. I can't imagine not wanting that. And so, you know, part of the reason why I love that I'm a nerd. I'm such a nerd. I have been in love with technology for as long as I can remember. Any new thing that I see that can make life better for folks, I'm super happy about. But Riley, I think you and your team are doing something just truly exceptional and incredibly valuable. I'm grateful you're doing it. I wish you tons of success. Please make sure that I have like your links and, you know, all the information you want folks to have. I'll put it in the YouTube description. But I am going to be cheering you on. And if you want to come back and do demonstrations or talk more about this or tell us how the rollout's going or anything, I'm here for it. I want to know how I can help. Is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you for your time. And I would love to also learn more about the conference that you had mentioned and how we can go do that in person and meet with people in person, so that people can try the technology for themselves, and so we can connect with your community and your network and just see how we can help.
That'll be really exciting. And for folks who haven't heard about it yet, I do Neuro Awesome Life events every year. This next one's going to be in Buffalo, New York, October 10th through 12th, 2023. And maybe we will have the privilege of seeing Riley and some of his team there. That I will fangirl so hard. Which is part of the way my autism comes out really obviously is that I like my sincerity and my joy is always kind of like over the top. And you know, I would be thrilled. I would be over the moon to have you all there, and I do everything I can to make that visit successful for you. But yeah, folks, come join us at our event. Check my website. That also will be going live in the next couple of weeks. So we got cool stuff to do, Riley.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, don't we?
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. I'll talk soon. Bye.